welcome. I'm Amy Anderson, and I'm joined today with Thomas Bodin of Buckingham Strategic Wealth. Tom is a chartered financial analyst and a certified financial planner. His role is a practice integration advisor. Welcome, Tom. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy.
Okay, Tom, today we are talking all about creating a retirement plan for a plastic surgery practice. And I'd love to start, if you could just share with us a little bit about your role as a practice integration advisor. What does that mean, and how do you help physicians and dentists?
No, it's a great question. It's kind of a nuanced type of role in our world within financial advisory. So Buckingham Strategic Wealth, as a firm, focuses on personal financial planning. My team, which provides practice integrated wealth management, really combines that with, we target and work almost explicitly with clinician owners. And so that practice integration is taking their personal financial plan and integrating the finances of the practice into the plan. As a business owner, you're going to have a lot of opportunities. As a clinician business owner, you are likely not coming at it with a great deal of, an MBA or experience in financial management. So we try to bridge that gap so that owners are able to make the most informed decisions possible and that those decisions align with what their personal financial goals are.
Right. So you're really looking at both sides of it, the personal plan and then how to structure it in their small business so that we're achieving goals on both sides.
Making those types of connections allows them to not miss some pretty powerful opportunities that they have for tax mitigation and understanding their business cash flow. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, terrific. Well, let's start with just some basics. What is a qualified retirement plan?
Yeah, so a qualified retirement plan, that qualification is going to be an IRS terminology that provides a certain type of tax benefit. I say certain type because it can come in two forms. We think about a traditional tax benefit, it's allowing us to be able to take income that we otherwise would have to recognize today for tax purposes and push that off into the future in retirement. When we take dollars out of a traditional account, we're going to be taxed on that as ordinary income in the future. The other type of tax benefit you can get is what we refer to as a Roth tax benefit. And that's ultimately deciding to be taxed on it today, but then set it aside for retirement so that in the future, when you take those dollars out, including the growth of those investments, they come out tax-free. So depending on where you're at in your life cycle, where you're at in terms of your financial goals and plan, making sure you're understanding the terminology of a qualified plan and utilizing it to your best benefit allows you to have an opportunity to decrease your lifetime taxes.
Okay. So I think a common plan that we all hear about is a 401k. Is that different, or is that a type of qualified retirement plan?
Great question. It's a type of qualified plan. So under the IRS, kind of statute of these qualified plans, 401k, that happens to be the site in tax code where, that plan's kind of laid out. We also have, IRAs, SEP IRAs, there's simple plans. There's a good variety of how these plans are kind of shell. Within the 401k, you do have that opportunity to kind of have either a Roth account, an after-tax account, or the traditional account as well. So knowing how to set up and use a 401k over your lifetime, even just as a participant, but then it gets more complicated as an owner, is a pretty good strategic tool to use in your financial plan.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you a pretty broad, open-ended question here. When you are working with a physician who has just started a practice, so we're talking small, maybe 3 to 5 employees tops, what are some of the considerations you take into an account when helping them design a retirement plan? Or what are some of the questions you're going to ask to help them think through the proper structure of this plan?
Yeah, it's a great question. Hopefully I don't go on too long with my response because we love getting involved in those types of discussions and design opportunities.
Yeah.
But that's ultimately it. What is the opportunity we're looking at? And what does the future look like it's going to hold for that business owner? As we are building out our practice, right? I mean, medical practices are capital intensive. Plastic surgery practices are capital intensive. There's going to be a lot of initial investment. So even if we come at it with a good amount of cash flow, we might have significant depreciation in the first couple of years that allow us to offset our taxes to be able to start to do some after-tax funding, not even introducing a qualified plan yet, or using it sparingly. As we get out of that initial setup phase, well, then a lot more of our income becomes taxed. Depending on the number of employees we have, the age of the employees, what our profitability looks like, what our cash flow looks like, and what our overall financial plan looks like from that personal perspective. We don't want to build a plan that is in excess of the free cash that's left after lifestyle expenditures for our clients, right? We don't want to end up in a scenario where we're cutting short what we're working so hard to accomplish today for that future. So understanding the cash flow of the business, digging into the taxes and how it is we're going to have the depreciation and amortization play out over time, we'll then start to be able to fine tune what is the best plan design within the world of a 401k, because not all 401ks are created equally. As I mentioned, that's just a reference to where in the tax code that is. For our clients who have a handful of employees, are high income earners, have a great deal of cash flow opportunity, really sitting in and designing a top heavy plan so that they and their families are able to retain the majority of the dollars that get put in. That's where we end up seeing this kind of net success of a plan over time. It supports the financial goals. It provides, kind of an opportunity for staff to have a benefit. And if we design it correctly, the staff's benefit costs them less over the lifetime to the business owner than would otherwise be paid in taxes over that same time period. That's where we want to make sure we're really feathering the needle so that we get it done in a way that really supports the financial plan, doesn't just create another account to have to deal with.
Okay. Terrific. Well, continuing on with some common terminology and definitions, we hear often about a safe harbor contribution or safe harbor being part of a plan. Tell us a little bit more about what that means and how that can benefit a practice owner.
Yeah, and it's a great question because when we look at the 401k plan, we kind of talked about there's two types of dollars that can go in, traditional and Roth. But within a 401k plan, there's also three buckets of funding that you're going to do. And again, we want to make sure that we're designing each of those buckets to be as strategic as possible for the owner's financial plan. The first is the deferrals. Our clients, your clients, the shared group that we work with and serve, they're both an employee and an employer. The deferral part of it is the employee part of it. Make sure that we're able to defer up to the maximum amount per year. Then the other two aspects of the plan are the employer side that our clients are going to contribute to. And that's going to be safe harbor, and that's going to be profit sharing. The term safe harbor really is just that. It is a safe harbor mandatory contribution that you commit to before the year starts, and you make your staff and those that are enrolled in the plan where you're going to do this safe harbor. The safe harbor allows us, from a non-discrimination testing perspective, to have a top-heavy plan. Our clients, we want to design a top-heavy plan for them. A top-heavy plan is one where a single individual or key individuals have 50% or more of the balance in these plans. So when we look at it from the cost perspective, we want to make sure we're keeping an eye on, okay, what's the safe harbor? What do we have to give our staff? What then does that buy us in funding opportunity on the profit sharing side of things so that we can gain a better understanding of what would go to staff if we participate, if we build the plan, versus what would go to taxes if we don't build the plan? And did we build the plan as efficiently as possible for the owner?
Right. Okay. Well, that's fascinating. So I don't mean to oversimplify it, but when we hear people talk about a matching contribution, does that usually fall under that safe harbor portion? Is that how we can think about that?
I don't think of safe harbor. You've got two broad options. One is you do a 3% mandatory contribution. So even if your staff isn't putting dollars in, you are saying, I'm going to give you 3% of your salary if you're in the plan. Okay. The other approach to it is the safe harbor match. Well, we do 3% on a contribution, or we do 4% on a match.
Okay.
If we're going to use the plan to really take advantage of what the owner can do, that safe harbor piece of it, whether it's 3% or 4%, By the time you include the profit sharing, we're likely going to be closer to 5 to 7% for your staff. So it'll kind of be in the mix either way. But by coming out before the beginning of the year and saying we're going to do it, and it goes into safe harbor, from a non-discrimination testing perspective, safe harbor dollars to your staff on a dollar for dollar basis are more valuable than dollars going to your staff in profit sharing. So that's kind of the trick.
Yeah, that's a great takeaway. It sounds like there's a lot of tax implications in all of this, right? And that's really a big goal here is we want to optimize our income and keep as much of it for ourselves, for our physician owners, right, that we can. I imagine then you have to work pretty closely with a CPA and the physician's individual tax planner to kind of figure out both sides of it. Is that fair? Is that, do you guys get pretty close into those relationships?
We're very close into those relationships. We want to make sure the accountant knows what's going on. We also have, we won't dive too deep into income recognition strategies, but for a lot of our owners, they're going to be taxed as S corps. You're choosing what you're going to recognize in W-2 income, and then you're choosing what you're going to have distributed to you from your entity that isn't flowing through your W-2 income. All else equal, the lower the W-2 income, the lower the employer taxes. But it's not all else equal, because the only compensation that goes into consideration for your qualified plan allocation is actually going to be your W-2 income. So the higher the W-2 income, the greater the percentage you keep in profit sharing. But there can be a marginal differential there. And so we'll do a lot of income testing with our CPAs, with the TPA who manages the fund. We'll really kind of dig in, because at the end of the day, it needs to be a net benefit. Are we saving more in taxes than what we're paying to our staff, than what we're recognizing by the strategy? So we work real closely with our client CPAs. That's just on the income side of things. Again, they're business owners and we're laying out a forward-looking financial plan. So there's a lot we want to make sure that the CPA is aware of, so that our clients get the best service possible and don't have to play that game of telephone between a financial advisor, a CFO, and the controller that is the CPA.
Gotcha. It sounds like a lot of number crunching.
I love it. It might not be for everybody, but myself and my team, we really enjoy it.
You love it. Good. Okay. So, everything's great. We're talking about retirement plan. I think most small business owners want to offer a retirement plan, both for themselves and as a great benefit for their employees. But realistically, I think the thing that prevents some physicians from moving forward, especially when they first started their practices, it's a little bit expensive, right? There are some administrative costs to set it up, to work with someone like you, to advise them on the plan, to design it, the TPA expenses. I mean, there's a lot to it. And so I know that's been one of the reasons that has prevented some physicians from diving right in. However, you've recently helped educate me on the newest Secure Act 2.0 and how it is making it more desirable and achievable for small business owners to move forward. Can you give us the overview? What is Secure Act and how is that changing the landscape?
Yeah, no, and it's a great question. It is, I love that they've decreased the cost barrier to entry of a qualified plan with Secure and Secure 2.0. And so recently the federal government has put a spotlight back on retirement preparedness and what are we doing for the workforce that's out there. Well, as a business owner, by kind of leaning into some of those provisions in Secure and Secure 2.0, we end up really kind of getting some nice advantage for a plan that we probably otherwise would have been exploring anyways. But there's two significant tax benefits that were introduced by Secure 2.0. The first is on the administrative cost side of things. You can get a cheap plan and you will get bad results. Or we can understand what your overall strategy is. We can work with a TPA and an actuarial team that really specializes in small business owners. And a lot of times we pay a little bit more to get that added benefit of keeping more of those dollars. Now, all else equal, we're going to do the math. We're going to make sure that that makes sense financially. But now with Secure 2.0, we will get a tax credit for the administrative expenses that we take on an annual basis for $5,000, up to $5,000 in that administrative fee. That stays intact for the first 3 years. So for a lot of these initial plan designs, a lot of times our 401ks, when we look at what the TPA, the administrative cost is, that's going to be between $4,000 and $5,000. It basically covers the setup in a tax credit. The other piece
that's huge. I just want to pause there and reflect on that because I think that is the number one biggest motivator. That yes, it is going to cost a few $1,000s up front to get it going, but it's not even a deduction. It was already a deduction. It's now a tax credit, right? The IRS is saying, we're going to help you out and offset that startup fee.
It's a huge benefit. And like I said, it's there for 3 years. So a lot of times when we've got some hesitant, we'll talk to business owners and they're not yet seeing it. They haven't had the opportunity to run the math on it, or they've been presented a plan that wasn't top heavy. So it's really expensive with staff. And so they're just kind of shaking their head like, no, I'm not going to do it. Don't trip over a dollar reaching for a nickel. Understand the value that's in there. But if you get 3 years of a look and see and somebody else is basically covering the cost of doing it, do it. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
The other aspect, and kind of mentioned it's the staff cost. That's another piece that sometimes our employers, our clients just aren't really wrapping their minds around in terms of, okay, what's the benefit to me? What's the benefit to staff? Or maybe it's a young client where we don't have that big, income dispersion yet. So the other tax credit that's baked into the plan here is for the first year of a plan, we get $1,000 in tax credit per employee who makes under $100,000 per year, but per employee for the first year, and then goes down proportionately over the next 4 years. So $1,000 per employee, $750, $500, $250, again, gives us this great opportunity to be able to utilize a tax credit to get into a plan, live around it, see the benefits of it, have a nerd like me, run the math, work with your CPA, make sure that they're showing you, here's really the benefit. But start that savings early, take advantage of these tax credits. And it gets really attractive. We were doing plans before Secure 2.0 that were very attractive. This then just is icing on the cake. It's awesome.
Yeah, kind of seems like it's a no-brainer. I know there's something that's going to become mandatory in 2025. Can you explain a little bit what even auto escalation and auto enrollment means, what's going to become mandatory, and how that impacts the practice?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. As I mentioned, with Secure and Secure 2.0, the federal government's goal was really, let's make retirement savings available to all of our employees out there. Let's do this in a way that kind of hits some of the academic evidence that we see over time and makes it easy for the employee. That's where auto escalation and auto enrollment come into play. We have a grace period until 2025, but basically what auto enrollment says is, when one of your employees becomes eligible to enter the plan, that you will have them enter the plan and you will then set what their deferral schedule looks like. So right now, an employee enters the plan, we let them know, hey, you're eligible for this plan. Here's your paperwork. What do you want to defer? Do you defer it? Do you not send in the paperwork? There's a lot of just the onus on the employee side of things. Mm-hmm. This puts the onus on the employer side of things for the enrollment. Then on the auto escalation, each year that passes, you must increase the deferrals for your employees by at least 1% per year, caps out at 15% over all of what their salaries are. But it, again, is one of these tools that from a financial readiness for the general population, I think is a great idea. For a small business owner who already, our clients are the clinician. They are the HR department. They're the payroll department usually. They're the management department. They're the CEO. They're wearing so many hats that this is one of those provisions that I think if we're able to get people in front of it, we're going to be better off. Right now, the way that the language reads in Secure 2.0 is that plans that are introduced after December 31st of 2024. So plans that are introduced in 2025, if you have over 10 employees and if you've been around for 3 years, you have to include these provisions in there. So if we introduce a plan 2023, 2024, we get the tax benefit, but we miss that ticking clock for this administrative responsibility. that, again, not a terrible thing for employees, but it's one more administrative burden for our clients that are already swamped in terms of running the business and being the clinician.
Wow. No, that's great. And I appreciate how much you recognize all the hats that these physicians are wearing, and that, it is, we're always kind of weighing the cost benefit of, and it's not just the financial cost, it's the financial, it's the administrative, it's the time, it's even the mental capacity to think through this and just to make a decision on it.
That's time value of money.
Yeah.
Right. Our clients are, those who we get to serve, they don't make any money by sitting at their office pushing paperwork around.
Right.
Then seeing patients. The more we can get them to be chairside, to be with the patient, the more we're able to do our job in terms of helping them be profitable, helping them be good business owners, et cetera. And to your other point, we know that if you're seeing patients all day, then your nighttime is doing all of this administrative. We can take any of that off of your plate and allow you to actually enjoy your clinical work and enjoy your time with your family. Then we're doing our job.
Exactly. Well, I often, working with surgeons, I know their happy place is the OR, and my goal is to keep them in there as much as possible, and we're all better off.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
So, Tom, I guess one of my final questions, in the context of starting a new practice, month 1, month 2, like we've just set up the business, maybe we've hired 1 employee, but not number 2 and 3. We're in that continue. And so again, as we talk about, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. I'm going to pause. Can you hear that?
Just slightly, but I can tell you.
My sister set the alarm off. Hang on a second.
No, and I now have Birdie rolling around on the ground. She's been snorting a bit. I don't know if that's been coming through or not.
Hang on. I got it. My sister's here. She just managed to set the alarm off. Amazing.
Oh. Okay. She didn't give her the code? She moved in next door and didn't give her the code?
She's here. I don't know how she set it off. They're having the inspection right now. So she brought all the dogs over, and anyway, we almost made it through. I had to ask one more question.
No, damn close. No, but I love that they're there. I think that's going to be cool.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's going to be amazing. Okay. I don't think I fully asked my question, did I?
No, I think that'll be a good kind of start point.
Yes. Okay. I'm just going to start over. Okay. From the beginning. No, I'm kidding. Not from the beginning.
Yeah. This is Thomas Bone.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Tom, one more question as we wrap up here. I work with a lot of plastic surgeons. They're just starting their practice. And some right now, the business is formed, but we don't have our first employee. We're planning for it. Others, a few months in, have 1 or 2 employees. As we think about all of the expense that goes into starting it and just the time and energy, where in that first year timeline would you recommend that they start thinking about the retirement plan? Because I often don't say this is day 1, but I think it's year 1. And so, what would you say? What would be the right time to start having these conversations with someone like you?
Yeah. So we like to get involved at a strategic planning level. So we like to sit down with our clients and really, break out the numbers, take some time for them to step back in that year 1, look at what they've done, make sure they understand where they're going, and what does that look like from a P&L profitability financial perspective. Mm-hmm. Unlikely you're going to come in and introduce a plan in year 1, but you should have those benchmarks and those measurements for when do we get involved in it? When does this come into play, and how does this come into play? Mm-hmm. As we were talking about earlier in the conversation, year 1, they're making a lot of capital investments. We're managing a lot of new debt in the cash flow of their lives. We're helping, we want to make sure we've got the visibility on how that cash flow is going to work, that they see it, they live it, they feel it, that we know how the depreciation, amortization, some of these kind of non-cash flow tax benefits you have as a business owner, that you're starting to get your mind around that. While accelerated, Section 179, you're going to have an asset that is fully depreciated in the first year. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, we're going to take accelerated depreciation. Mm-hmm. So come year 3, come year 4, Now we've got all of those non-cash depreciation elements coming off of our cash flow or balance sheet. Now is a great time. And our cash flow hopefully is growing. That's a great time to know, okay, now is when we drop this plan in. We've thought about it. We know what the design looks like. We know how it's going to play out. That forethought just allows our clients, those, who are trying to run these businesses, just a good runway where it's, I'm just dotting I's and crossing T's, as opposed to trying to reinvent the wheel every time it comes out. So really want to make sure that it's part of that kind of planning year one, even if it's not something that becomes an implementation item year one. And as I mentioned before, with that auto enrollment, auto escalation, if you've been around for 3 years and you have not already introduced a plan, well, now we've got that auto enrollment, auto escalation if we've got more than 10 employees.
Right.
Well, if we're looking like that's going to come up in year two, we've got those tax benefits, and it makes it cost neutral to introduce a plan, possibly a little premature than we otherwise would have. But we capture the tax benefit. It alleviates the cash flow piece of it. We've gotten in front of these, new administrative responsibilities if this gets introduced after 2025. Yet again, it's a great opportunity, but one, if we kind of just look at it in the rearview mirror, we're going to miss the planning opportunity.
Gotcha. That makes so much sense. And I think that just supports everything that, we work with our clients. It's planning. We want to get ahead of it. We want to be proactive, not reactive. And ultimately, getting back to why physicians are starting their own practice, right? I mean, it's for multiple reasons, but one is that personal growth and achieving this dream and building a business that employees want to work at and all of those good, feel good things, and to be personally beneficial through all of it. Yeah.
You want all those goals to be accomplished, and you're working hard. No problems if you're financially successful because of it.
Exactly.
But with that role, a lot of times the clients that we work with, they can produce themselves out of a lot of financial mistakes or a lot of missed opportunities. You've got somebody who's kind of there with you, serving in this fiduciary financial capacity, getting to know your other consultants and making sure we all have a sense of where this is going. Well, then we're going to miss less of those opportunities, and net, all else equal.
Yeah.
We end up with wealthier clients. We end up with clients that are more confident in their financial plan, that are running a tighter ship in terms of what their business looks like. Surrounding yourself with the right people, the right consultants as a business owner can be the difference between just living a nightmare or living a dream.
I love that. Well, thank you, Tom. Thanks so much for explaining this in an easy to understand way. These are not necessarily simple concepts, but I think they're very important for a business owner to understand. We appreciate everything you do for our physicians. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy. It's always a pleasure to be able to work with you.